The third Sunday I did not go. I was not sick. I want to say that plainly at the beginning, because the first 2 times I had been sick, genuinely sick, and those had been tolerated in the way the community tolerates necessary things, with a kind of careful, watchful patience that lets you know the tolerance has a limit. The third Sunday I was not sick. I was tired in a way that sickness does not fully explain, tired in a way that had been building for months underneath everything else, a tiredness that lived below the bones and had no remedy I could find in sleep. I lay in bed that morning and listened to my husband getting dressed in the dark, and I thought about the 3 hours on the hard bench and the high German I could not follow, and the sermon about yielding that I had heard in some form every year of my life. And I thought, not today. 2 words, the quietest rebellion I had ever committed. And I had no idea yet what 2 words were going to cost me. My name is Miriam, and this is Miriam the Amish, the channel where I finally say the things my community would never allow me to say out loud. I grew up Old Order Amish in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I left a few years ago. If you want to hear the truth about Amish life from someone who actually lived it, please subscribe, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. There is still so much I have not told you. Now let me tell you what church actually means inside an Old Order Amish community, because the word itself carries so much less weight in the English world than it carries in mine, that I need to build the picture before the rest of this makes sense. In the Old Order tradition, church is not a building you go to. There is no building. Church happens every other Sunday, rotating between the homes and barns of the district families, the long wooden benches carried from farm to farm in the church wagon, set up in someone's cleared front room or swept-out barn before 7 in the morning. By the time service begins, the room is full. Men on one side, women on the other, children pressed between mothers and grandmothers. The service lasts 3 hours, sometimes longer. 2 sermons in High German, a language most members do not speak fluently, but have heard their entire lives, so the shapes of the words are familiar even when the meanings slip past. You sit without crossing your legs. You do not check the time. You do not whisper. You do not leave except for a nursing baby or a sick child, and even then you return as quickly as possible, and the returning is noticed. What you need to understand is that attendance is not optional in the way that English church attendance is sometimes optional. A personal choice about how to spend a Sunday morning. In an Old Order community, attendance is covenant. When you were baptized, you vowed to uphold the ordnung and the community and the gathered church. Missing a service without a legitimate reason, and the community has precise ideas about what constitutes legitimate, is not a personal decision. It is a breach. It is the kind of thing that gets noticed immediately, discussed quietly, and responded to with the particular machinery the community has built over centuries for bringing wandering members back into line. I had never missed a service before the winter I was 24. Not once in my entire life, not since I was old enough to sit on the bench without being held. That is how total the attendance expectation was. It had never even occurred to me as a choice. You went, the way you breathed, the way you fed the animals before the sun was fully up. It was simply part of the structure of a week, and the structure of a life, and the structure of who you were inside the community that held you. The first Sunday I missed, I had a fever of 103, and my husband told the families at service that I was unwell, and people nodded with the particular sympathy the community extends to genuine illness, which is warm and practical, and involves food appearing at your door. The second Sunday the fever had broken, but I was still weak, and my husband again explained my absence, and again the community extended its warm, practical sympathy, and I lay in bed and felt it like a blanket pulled up around something that was not quite warmth, but was close enough to be grateful for. The third Sunday I was not sick. My husband stood in the doorway of the bedroom in his good clothes and his good hat, and he looked at me in the bed, and he said, "Are you unwell?" And I said, "I am tired." And he stood there for a moment, with an expression I had learned to read over years of marriage, not anger, not yet, but the particular stillness that precedes it, the way the air goes still before weather. He said, "I will tell them you are still recovering." And he left. And I lay there and listened to the buggy leave, and thought about what he had just done, which was to cover for me, to place his own credibility between me and the community's scrutiny, and I felt grateful and trapped in the exact same moment, which is a combination I had become very familiar with inside that marriage. I want to stop here, because the part that comes next is the part that took me years to understand fully, and I want you to stay with me through it. Please subscribe to Miriam the Amish, like this video, and turn on the notification bell, because what the community did in the weeks after that third missed Sunday is something most people outside plain life have no idea is even possible. And once you understand it, you will never think about religious community the same way again. The response did not come from the bishop first. That surprised me. I had expected the bishop, the formal structure, the official machinery of correction. What came first was softer than that, and in some ways harder to bear. It came from the women. The Monday after the third Sunday, 2 women from our district arrived at my door with food. This is not unusual after an illness. Food is the community's first language of care. They came in and sat down and asked after my health, and I said I was much better, and they said they were glad, and we talked about ordinary things for 20 minutes, and when they left I thought, that was kind. By Tuesday I understood it was not only kindness, it was reconnaissance. By Wednesday a 3rd woman had come, and then a 4th, and each visit had the same shape, warm, brief, concerned, and each one left me with the clear sense that I had been assessed rather than comforted, that my color and my demeanor and the tidiness of my kitchen had all been noted and would be reported. My mother-in-law came on Thursday. She did not bring food. She sat at my kitchen table and looked at me with the particular expression of a woman who loves you and is also afraid of what you are becoming. And she said she had heard I had been struggling. Not sick. Struggling. That word had traveled from my husband through the community and arrived back at me changed, and the change told me everything about how my third Sunday had been interpreted. Not as illness, as struggle, as a woman who was losing her footing inside her faith and her household, and who needed to be caught before she fell further. The deacon came on Friday. He was gentle the way the community is always gentle when it is applying the most pressure. He asked how I was feeling. He asked whether I had been finding the services difficult lately. He asked whether there was anything troubling me that the church could help carry. Every question was an open hand. Every open hand was also a closed door, because behind each question was the same unspoken message that ran beneath all of it. We have noticed. We are watching. The path back to full standing is the path back to that bench, and we are here to walk it with you, as many times as it takes, until you walk it yourself. My husband and I talked that night, and talked is again perhaps the wrong word for it. He was not unkind. He was frightened, I think, in the way a man is frightened when the life he has built begins to show cracks he does not know how to repair. He said he had told people I had been unwell, because he had wanted to protect me, but that he could not keep doing that the community's trust was something he needed to maintain, and that my absences were making that harder. He was not wrong. He was also not asking me what was wrong. He was asking me to return to the bench so that the machinery around us could settle back into its expected shape. I returned the following Sunday. I sat on the bench for 3 hours and listened to a sermon about a woman in the Old Testament who had strayed from her household and been brought back to herself through the patient correction of her community. The bishop did not look at me while he preached it. He did not need to. Half the women on my side of the room understood who the sermon was for. I sat very still and kept my eyes forward, and felt the particular weight of being the subject of a lesson about yourself, spoken in a room full of people who love you, which is one of the most disorienting experiences I know. An English woman I met years later, after I had left, someone who had grown up in a different kind of closed religious community entirely, said something to me that made me feel less alone about that Sunday in a way I had not expected. She said, "The sermon was not about you. The sermon was for everyone else. It was to remind them what their job was, what they were supposed to do when someone in the community began to drift. The sermon was the system talking to itself. You were just the occasion for it." In therapy, I found a term for the week between my third Miss Sunday and my return to the bench. My therapist called it a soft enclosure, a form of social pressure that uses care and community and love as its instruments, rather than punishment or threat. She said it is one of the most effective forms of behavioral correction ever developed by human communities, because it is almost impossible to resist or resent. You cannot be angry at people for bringing you food. You cannot push away a mother-in-law who says she is worried. You cannot tell a deacon with gentle eyes that you do not want his concern. Each individual act of attention is an act of love. The aggregate of them is a wall, and by the time you understand it is a wall, you are already back on the bench, and the wall has worked. I left 14 months after that third Sunday. The tiredness that had kept me in bed that morning was still there when I left, unchanged, and I finally understood that no amount of returning to the bench was going to touch it, because it was not a tiredness of the body. It was the tiredness of a self that had been yielding for so long it had forgotten what it felt like to simply rest inside its own life, without performing the resting for an audience. If you have ever been too tired to perform the life that was expected of you, and had that tiredness treated as a spiritual problem to be corrected, rather than a signal to be listened to, I see you. If people who loved you ever surrounded you with care that functioned as pressure, and you felt grateful and suffocated at the same time, and could not explain the suffocation because the care was real, I see you. If you have ever sat on a bench or in a pew or at a table and understood that the sermon being preached was for you, and felt the particular loneliness of being the lesson rather than the person, I see you. Your tiredness was not faithlessness. It was your body and yourself telling you the truth about the life you were living in the only language they had left. And you deserved someone to listen to it rather than correct it. If this story reached something in you, please subscribe to Miriam the Amish, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what comes next. There is still so much I have not said. Until next time, choose your freedoms wisely. They might just save your life.